What's up, my nerds? So here we go. Here's a very basic, super easy Death Guard painting scheme. I say super easy. It's minimum effort. I have literally decided to just smash out my Death Guard kill team, who were, well, they weren't even a kill team when I got them. They were Space Marine heroes. So that's how long they've been sat on the shelf. We're going for super basic. We're not using an airbrush. Not using any enamels or anything. We're just using acrylic paints. 90-something% GW paints. Would be 100%, but I just couldn't be bothered to move and get the others that I would use. So I'm using everything to hand. So these are Frondier Brown base paint. No other, I've not sprayed them or anything. We're just literally grabbing a crappy brush and we're stabbing in some brown base paint. So chose Frondier Brown because it's got decent coverage, and I needed to start with a brown. Plus Frondier Brown was next to me. I could have used Rhinoxide, I could have used Dry Eye Bark, it didn't really matter. But yeah, so we're just stabbing it in. I've sped this up massively because even I was bored at this point of painting them. Really wish I'd reconsidered and used my airbrush to quickly spray them, but you know, I thought just gonna cause myself as much pain as possible. Thankfully it covers well. So yeah, we just based them out in brown. So that's where we're starting. Next, I am grabbing my incredibly advanced dry palette, which is definitely not just a post-it pad, along with my incredibly expensive dry brush, which is actually not. It's an ELF makeup brush from Amazon. It costs literally like £1 or £2, but very good, really good. I own expensive dry brushes, but again, they weren't near me, so this was. So yeah, we are dry brushing with Rakarth Flesh. Rakarth Flesh is the second colour we're using. Thankfully, this was a damn sight quicker than the initial painting. But yeah, so Rakarth Flesh, we're going to smash it off into all of them. The main reason for this is I just didn't want to go up too bright. I do go to a third colour as just a real quick dry brush. Excuse the police car noises. I assume that's a police car. Didn't want to go too bright straight away, so we're using Rakarth Flesh. Dear Christ, that was an ambulance. Yeah, using Rakarth Flesh just to build it up a bit. I went a bit heavy on this guy, but it didn't matter. It literally didn't matter. We smash through these chappies, and then we go into Pallid Witch Flesh. So again, not as heavy a dry brush as the others. It was just a real light brush. You can see there as they change colour, they're getting a bit brighter. So it's funny, I forgot to actually do any video footage of what these look like afterwards when I'd actually done them. But yeah, so we Agrax Earthshade them after that. Agrax, mine was an old pot of Agrax, so it's very, very dark. So I've used some Lamy Medium to thin it. If you've got new pots, you should be fine. You shouldn't need to thin it down. But doing this with the Agrax basically meant they look like this. Pallid Witch Flesh, you wouldn't even know was there. It's all been toned down. Everything's kind of blended together with that Agrax Earthshade. It makes everything so much easier to see. The armor plates are almost the colour that I need them to be. We've got some pre-shading in there as well. They look pretty cool, as they are, to be honest. But yeah, that's the reason that you can see in the background, spoiler, there's the guys that I've actually got to the standard I need them to for this video. But I forgot to do the footage, so I just recorded this quickly to show you what they'd look like. But yeah, it makes it a lot easier to see and to pick out all of the little gribbly bits and boils and buboes and tentacles and whatever. And yeah, now it's essentially just going to be colouring by numbers. So we're just going to go through in a bit. We'll start blocking out the metallics. Once the metallics are blocked out, do some washes. And yeah, it is honestly very low skill. The most effort I think in this entire paint was painting them brown to begin with. So going in straight from those basically, and we're painting in all of the what will be the bronzy sort of metallics. Any gold will do, it doesn't matter. I'm using here is a Viking Gold by Metal Alchemy Scale Color. It didn't need to be. It's just this was the gold that happened to be closest to me. I could have used Retributor Armor. I could have used anything. You pick your metallic. Go for it. It's all going to get washed anyway. Yes, that was not the last time Agrax Earthshade will be used on these models. But yeah, don't technically have to paint as much trim as I have. I just like all of these bits of trim picked out, especially depending on what colour you're going to go with. If you're going like green and stuff, they might look a little bit boring if you don't add some trim in there. But again, you don't have to. To be fair, there isn't actually that much on them. It's not like it's not like World Eaters or even just standard Chaos Space Marines or anything like that. They really don't actually have that much trim to paint. So Death Guard are definitely a lower on the metallics. So you really got to just pick and find what you want, just to not make them look too boring. So yeah, gold was done, and then going in with, again, any silver I do. I generally prefer to use Iron Warrior base, but in this instance it was Dark Silver by Pro Acryl, again just because it was next to me. It has good coverage. Both of those paints actually have really good coverage. The Iron Warriors, Iron Warrior paint, base paint from GW is fantastic. My favourite silver, to be honest. But this Dark Silver from Pro Acryl, great coverage, really good. Again though, yeah, just go through and pick them out. Now, I would have batched all of these at the same time, but because they're such individual models, I kind of didn't want to. I kind of wanted to do them in this instance, for these parts, I wanted to do them as individuals. Obviously, the paint of the brown and the dry brush in, fine, batch it. And I'm going to, once they're all at the same point, when they're all at the same level, then I'm going to batch through again, maybe. I think I've already reconsidering doing that now. I think I'm going to carry on just painting them individually. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see when I get there. But I feel like maybe the individual painting is probably going to be the right way to go. So, yeah, I'm going to speed through these, speed it all up, and then I have got one that then I've carried on, because obviously, as you've already seen, as spoiled earlier, I do carry on these, start painting them individually, and then, but I didn't film 3 of them. So I filmed the most recent one I've done, and I'll show you what my shenanigans of what I got up to there. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we'll pop that one in, and we'll do it that way. Just be glad that I sped this up, because again, this was a painful video. So yeah. We batched in 3 of them straight away, and then I've chosen now to do this 4th one here. So this is the chapter that in a minute we'll slow down and we'll carry on, because I do go through and paint 3 of them before I choose to start recording again. So soz. But here we go. Right. So we've already done the gold. We've done the silver. And now I'm taking Flayed One Flesh. Now my Flayed One Flesh is very old, and I can't remember if I've added Lamium Medium to it in the past just to reactivate it a bit, but it's odd. You can put it on thick, and it's nice and bright, or you can put a blob on and then you can kind of drag it and you can almost glaze with it. So it's weird. It has a very, it's got little pools of very thin paint. So I love it. If you don't happen to have a messed up paint like pot that I do, just get some out on a palette and thin it down a little bit with some Lamium. Because what we're doing here is we're essentially glazing, or we are just highlighting. I'm just painting on some chunky highlights, and then I'm just pulling them back and around, just so that it's not. You see the disgusting pot there. Yeah, I'm essentially just doing chunky highlights with Flayed One Flesh. It doesn't have the best coverage, so it's still leaving a lot of that pre-shading from the dry brushes and the Agrax. It's all still there. You don't have to be super neat with it. If you want it to be a bit brighter, just go around the model once, and then by the time you get to where you started, start again, and you can make those highlights a bit thinner. And that's all I'm doing here. We're literally just going over the whole model. We're just adding highlights with that flayed one flesh. Yeah, I was just going to say about the pallid witch flesh, but pallid witch flesh we won't touch. We're not going to touch in this video. Pallid witch flesh will be used later when I go in for doing some chipping and stuff like that. We'll be using pallid witch flesh for our like extreme highlighty bits for chips and things like under the eye sockets and stuff like that. So yeah, use this now to also lighten any of the bones. We can go a bit brighter on these because they need to be. Things like the mushrooms, the buboes, they all need to be brighter. So just using that pallid witch, god damn it, it's a pallid witch flesh. Just using the flayed one flesh to get things up brighter. These little mushrooms and bits and pieces, any fleshy bits. But again, we don't need to be massively neat because we're going to be washing it. And then we can always go back in. This paint is so thin that we can always go back in and reapply and reapply and reapply. Now you might not want to do that, but I'm not going to do that right now. As you see, I've not gone back over it at all. So next step for me is one, to compare them, just to show you. But the second one is, the next step is to get some sepia, if I remember right. Yes. So Seraphim Sepia wash. Now this is the newer wash, so it's a new pot, not my old one. I've run out of that. So it's not as strong. Doesn't mean it's not as good, but it's not as strong. So I'm only putting this, basically I'm putting it all over pretty much all the metallics. Really just wanting it to run on the recesses, into the recesses of parts. It's not going to affect the gold too much, so it doesn't matter. I'm just putting it all over the gold and that, so that it seeps into the actual like edges and the recesses next to the shoulder pad guards and stuff. And then just popping it in, just chucking it in little recesses anywhere you want, behind the knees, under the armpits, in any of the creases, down the lower belly, down the lower parts of the helmet, anywhere like that. Don't go just like slavering it over the armor plates, else you're going to have to go back through and repaint that flayed one flesh straight away. But yeah, so it's not going to affect things too much, but it does add the nice brown stainy bits in there. Again, we could do more, but we don't want to because we want it to look like this. So, in fact, he may not look like him. Hence how pale we go. So yeah, going to hair dry him quickly, get that dried off. That's what I'm doing now. And then I'm going to break out the Agrax again. Again, like I said, mine is a old pot of Agrax, so it's very strong. So if you've got a newer one, you may need to do this twice. You might not have to, but you might have to. And what I'm doing here is I'm going over all of the gold trim fully with the Agrax Earthshade. I'm also putting it across the silvers, and I'm adding it into any like deep recess parts, like in behind the knees and stuff like that. What this will do is it will dull down that gold. It will look like a really dirty bronze. We'll put it all over the silvers, and then we'll just use it to just add some shades back, some like darker tones down in like some of the recesses and bits. But it will just make that those metallics kind of pop a bit more. Yeah, don't have to overdo it. Don't slap it all over the whole model. We are kind of doing this as a controlled like wash. So yeah, don't just go slapping it everywhere. Just poke it into little bits and make sure all of the just making sure that all the trim is covered, and then hair drying it again. But there you go. It's looking pretty sick. And no pun intended there. So next step is to get some basic bits done. So this is just Cassandor yellow. I'm popping it on. It's a shade, popping it on, and I'm wicking it away from those buboes so that it's like a brighter point. They're not going to get left like this. None of the like gross bits and stuff, they're just getting basic passes now. They are going to be goopy and glossy and red and weepy and bleh. Next, that's Militarum green contrast paint, just on the left shoulder pad there. And then Sigvold burgundy. Now, ever since the original like Death Guard for me many years ago, God knows how many years ago, all of my Death Guard have always had burgundy loincloths, burgundy cloth in general. So it's nice and easy. Now this is a fuchsia pink by Atom. I didn't need to use this. It's just that it literally was the pink that was next to me. So don't worry, use anything. I prefer generally Screamer Pink and Pink Horror, that sort of stuff, but I just chose this because it was next to me. And in all honesty, it's super pink. So I probably, in fact, I know that I decided that it was way too pink to leave as it was. I didn't need to mess with the pink right now because again, I've many things to do with this, so it's going to get touched. But yeah, I decided I didn't like it, so I grabbed some Pale Flesh from Vallejo Air, and I added that to the pink, and I've just flopped it back over. I also realised, to be honest, that was still very pink because I hadn't shook the paint, the Pale Flesh. So I will, in a moment, shake it and then pop that into the mix and just quickly go back over and bring it. I wanted it as a more like intestinal sort of pink colour. But that's how they'll get left for a minute. They will get shades and stuff applied to them later when we go to make them more goopy and minging, but not for the moment. Like that's how they're getting left. And they're absolutely perfectly fine like that. I mean, that's three colours essentially. It's the base colour, a lighter colour, and a highlight. So you could just leave them like that. You know, it is essentially tabletop ready. That's it. He could be classed as done. I think at this point is where I realised that a bunch of the metallics are missing down on the gun, so they'll get done at some point. But yeah, this is one of those like points where you can get on a mini and be like, do you know what, I'm done. But nope. So now it's Sycorax Bronze or Sycorax Bronze, whatever you want to call it. And what I'm doing is I'm going over and I'm filling in the bits that I missed. And not to worry that it's a different colour because again, they'll get shaded the crap out of later anyway when we go back through. But what I'm doing is I'm basically highlighting the edges of all of the bronze armour. I don't have to be massively clean with it. Again, they're going to get more stuff attached to them, but we're just stippling and putting dots and scratches, whatever you want to add to it. It's just bringing it back up because at the moment it's all been doled out by the Agrax shade, and even like rusty bronze and stuff like that, you know, it'll look, it'll still have some shiny bits. So I mean, this is what, less than an hour, and we've gone from this to this, and it, you know, simply by doing the metallics and then a couple of washes, but then like it was just metallics and washes, so we've not really done anything else. Painting the pink bits and the yellow and the green, that's like a 5-minute job. It's really not doesn't take any skill. It's surprisingly easy to do. So yeah, we're essentially just highlighting metallic still on here. Now I have gone in and I've tried to be a bit neater on some of the raised, like, you know, the higher raised areas, but I didn't need to. We're going to go back in later when we hit it with enamels and stuff. It's going to be dulled down again, and we're going to have to redo this, so I don't have to spend much time on it. I think I've just go around and do chunky ones if you want to. Again, like I say, I'm going to hit it with enamels. If you're not planning on doing it with enamels, then maybe take a bit more time on this bit. Just go around and just do some spot highlights, just some little stipply bits. I'm painting this in the knowledge that I'm going to be messing with it later. But to be honest, when it gets to the point where I've got extra stuff to do, where I'm going to start using enamels and I'm going to start using things like technical paints and stuff like that, I could happily leave them. The point I get them to now, I could happily leave them and just call them tabletop ready. Obviously, apart from the bases, I haven't done the bases. I'm just going to do simple bases as well. Just going to be some texture paint and just mess with them. I'm not going to gloop them all up and stuff on the bases because I kind of like my Killteam bases to be a bit more like a bit more normal looking, just so that when we're playing on like the game boards the GW game boards that are kind of grey and things like that they don't look completely out of place. You know, I don't need like friggin' jungle bases when they're fighting in a cities game. So I will just kind of make them boring, generic bases. But yeah, if this would kind of be like the point where if you're not going to mess with them any further than this, then take your time now doing your highlights. Just add that like brighter highlight in. You don't necessarily have to use the correct bronze. If you've gone with a different color, then just go with whatever the brightest of the golds you've got. You know, if I'd gone with a different type, if I was doing this gold, I'd spot highlight with Liberator gold. And then I guess, like, even then, if you want to go even further, you could do some spot highlights of silver on there. Just depends on how bright you want to make it. Mine aren't going to go any brighter than Sycorax bronze. It's a bright bronze, so it's once we start messing with the metals and stuff more, that'll be the brightest we'll go. So there you go. I mean, apart from getting the silvers and stuff done, you could literally just say he's done. There are some glaringly obvious misses there. Like I've not done any of the like pussy, bloody sort of stuff that's dribbling out, because we're gonna do that. I'm gonna probably mess with some Nurgle's rock or something glossy. I'm undecided, but none of them have had their like bloody gooey bits and stuff painted yet. So yeah, we're gonna go back in. We'll do that. So next is silvers. So we did it with the dark silver. We've hit with some agrax. It's had some sepia on there. And all I'm going to do now is, I've just whatever was to hand. I'm using iron hand steel. I've used iron hand steel on all of them. It's a bright silver, but it's not massively bright. And it's just literally just some like dotting and spot highlights. Sorry, the camera went out of focus because I completely didn't notice that I changed my hand position. But yeah, we're just going around any of the silver metallics and just picking them out. There were a couple bits that I'd missed, so I thought, well, we'll just get them up to, this bright silver, and then when we go back in, if you do something like that and you're not planning on doing what I'm doing later, just get some agrax again and just put it over the silver that you've missed, and it'll be fine. It won't. It won't make any difference. Just go with the brightest one and then just hit it with agrax again. But yeah, there's not much left to do here. It's quite literally just picking through, highlighting up those silvers. It's essentially an overbrush on a few bits. We're just brushing it lightly over. There we go, camera's back in focus. And yeah, if you go too bright, just dig out the sepia again, dig out the agrax again. And just go back over the bits that you've made too bright. It's, at the end of the day, it's a Death Guard Marine, so it's a Plague Marine. It's supposed to be all gross and minging. And there's no harm in going back in. Just don't put your paint on too thick. As long as your paint's on like thin enough, you're going to be able to go back over this. Every single paint that I've applied here, except for the washes, have been straight from the pot. None of it's been thinned. And I'm just not putting very much, there's hardly any paint on these brushes, just don't get too much on there. Keep seeing videos of people and like the paint goes all the way up the brush, it's all up the ferrule, it's everywhere. You just don't need much paint on there. Unless you're like doing what I did in the beginning with a brown, with a big crappy brush, and you're just stabbing it in. Again, not a huge amount of paint on that brush when I was doing that. You can't put thick layers on if you don't have much paint on your brush. Just take your time. There's, this guy was, all in all, you could probably smash all of these guys out in about 3 or 4 hours. Probably less than that, to be fair. It was about an hour to get them brown and dry brushed. And then, what was this? This one guy was probably about half an hour or so. Okay, yeah, maybe about 5 hours. I don't know. Depends how quick you are. I wasn't being particularly fast. I was just putting paint on. So, but there you go. That's how where we are so far. Everyone's the same sort of colours. And yeah, could easily get a wall band smashed out in a day or 2 if you wanted to split it up. They look pretty cool. And the nice thing about this is that if you didn't want the bone sort of colours, like old school Death Guard or 30k sort of Death Guard bone coloured armor, is you could just get a contrast paint. Once you got to this point, you could get a contrast paint, thin it down. You know, if you want like a green or a red or whatever, you can just put it over the top of that armor, and it'll probably be fine. So that's it. Thanks for watching. That was, I'd say, a very low effort paint scheme. I should hope it was anyway. And yeah, I will probably do a catch-up video at some point when we get to doing the growth stuff. If people want to see that, I shall pop it up here. But anyway, thank you for watching. As always, love your faces and appreciate it. So, there's a like or a subscribe. That'd be great. Cheers. Bye.